If the question today was, is giving good, then it wouldn't take us long to find agreement on the matter. But the question today is profoundly different. It's, is giving good for you? And that is a question that divides opinion wherever I go. You see, some people's giving experiences are that it's like a black hole, that they get nothing back even if they expected it. And other people fundamentally believe that giving is about the cause and they shouldn't get anything back. But what I want to suggest today is that not only can giving be good for you, but that understanding the power of giving is fundamental to understanding who we are and our role amongst others. When I was 10, my teacher, Mrs. Taylor, told us a story about two places that looked really similar. They were banquet halls, decadent and beautiful like this venue here. They were laid out for a feast for hundreds of people. And on each place, the only weird thing about the places was that the only piece of cutlery were huge wooden spoons. In the first place, the people were depressed, hungry, and alone. And in the second place, people were happy, laughing, tucking into the feast and enjoying life. She went on to explain to us that in the first place, the only difference was that people thought the spoons were there to feed themselves. And trying to get these huge spoons back into their mouths proved so tricky, and they ended up becoming frustrated, depressed, and obviously hungry. In the second place, somebody realized that the spoons were not there to feed themselves, but that they should feed the people on the opposite side of the table to them. As people saw this working, they copied and shared, built bonds, and ate the food together and enjoyed life. I didn't listen to much of what Mrs. Taylor taught me at school. If you're listening, I'm sorry. But this story stuck with me. When I was 15, I went to a youth camp, and on the first day, they asked us to gather around in a big circle. Then they said, everybody take a step in, and then take another step in. Now we were standing hunched, shoulders close together, feeling awkward as you do as a spotty teenager when other people are too near to you. They then said, turn sideways and take another step in. We're now completely front and back next to people beside us. And the next thing they said to do was completely counterintuitive. They said, on the count of 3, we're all going to sit down. With no chairs around, that feels completely bonkers. But they went 1, 2, 3, sit down. And if any of you have done this in a cheesy work experience or team building exercise, you'll know that the person in front of you sits on your lap and you sit on the lap of the person behind you. Somehow, together, you create a structure that is self-supporting, something that you couldn't have achieved on your own. I feel like I learned then something deep and profound that I didn't know how to put into words about the interconnectedness of us as a society. So, Rabbi John Sachs in London tells this a lot better than I can. He says, imagine for a minute that you had all the power in the world, and in a moment of lunacy, you decided to share that power with 9 other people. What would you have left? 1/10 of the power that you had in the beginning. He then says, imagine that you had all of the love in the whole world, and then you decided to share it with 9 others. What would you have left? Love works on a different economy to power. When you share your love, it doesn't take away from you, it only adds more. And it adds to the people that you share it with. Love is viral. It magnifies when you share it. It is made to be shared. I've got 2 friends. One of them's called Danny, and the other one is called Isla. We're quite good friends. They're very close. We spend a lot of time together. Often when we're at dinner, I've begun to notice a theme, though, is that Danny nearly always pays for the meals, for Isla's food. She's nearly always the designated driver. Isla's always up and down. One minute she's happy, the next minute she's upset. Danny's always telling me stories of Isla crying on her shoulder. I haven't known Isla as long as I've known Danny, but sometimes I'm wondering why Danny wants to keep giving, keep on giving to Isla when all it feels like is Isla is taking. But there's something that you need to know about Isla, is that she's 7 months old, and Danny is her mother. And when you know that, it fundamentally changes the equation. Whatever you were thinking about Isla, you've changed. Not because anything material in the equation has changed, but that something intangible has been added to the equation, the bond between a mother and a daughter that we all understand but can't necessarily articulate. And this is the challenge of understanding how a mother continues to give when she gets nothing back. Really what it is that when Isla smiles or looks at her in the eye, she receives something more from Isla than Danny could ever give her in material goods. See, real giving is not just a transaction. It's about love in action. And when you look at the tangible things in this world, you're only seeing a small part of the equation. When you do a search on Google, it doesn't take you long to find a whole raft of research to prove the thesis that we're talking about today. Is giving good for you? And the answer is unanimously yes. You can look at physiological research, the impact that it has on our health. You can see that actually people involved in an active giving lifestyle can add years to their life, reduce blood pressure, and the risk of heart illnesses. We could look at the sociological impacts. We can see that people who give to people around them build stronger bonds, and this forms better communities and societies, promotes well-being and peace within the living arrangements. We can even look at the neurological level. We can look to see the impact that it has on our brains when we actively participate in giving. It reinforces the pathways, the serotonin and dopamine pathways that get activated when we do things like have sex, eat chocolate, or take drugs. It's fundamentally good for you, but why then are we finding that there is an epidemic level decline of giving in our generation? I don't believe it's due to a lack of proof, a lack of research, or a lack of thought on the matter. It's my persuasion that it's simply due to a lack of leadership. And that's why we've started to experiment with different ways of giving to see if we can activate different behaviors in people to get them engaged with causes that matter. So, meet Herb. Herb is a good friend of mine. He runs TEDx in the north of England. We decided to run an event last November called Stitch Your Friends Up. 5 people would get on stage, and for the sake of a cause that they care about, they would do something stupid if we raised the right amount of money. I managed to convince Herb that this was a good idea, and he stupidly agreed. We had some beers, we had some fun, some live music, and we enjoyed our time together. Halfway through the night, we raised the total we needed to get Herb to commit to his action. And then we dressed him up as a Japanese geisha. He's going to hate me for this, by the way. But we had a great time. We went home. We raised lots of money. But the real learning of this experiment for me was in the morning, the day after. See, I woke up, I grabbed my phone, and I looked, and I could see that Herb had posted a photo on Facebook of him dressed as a female Japanese geisha. And what happened was, as you can see, it went mental. 10 times more interactivity on that piece of content than I've ever seen on his wall. Over 120 people wanting their tiny piece of the action. And you can draw your own conclusions as to why this is, but I think it's because he did something vulnerable, something creative, something a little bit stupid for something that mattered to him. He didn't share how much was raised or the transactional value. He simply connected something fun and engaging with something that mattered. He gave a little bit of himself, and it made a difference to the people in his social networks. Another experiment we're doing is a bit closer to my own heart. In fact, it's really about my belly. With all this hard work and sitting behind my computer I've been struggling to get out and get the exercise that I need to stay fit and healthy. Despite my friends and family having a go at me, telling me to get my running shoes on, it hasn't been enough of a motivation for me to run out and get fit. So we decided to create an app called the Berner. And in the Berner, we pull in all of the running data from my running app called Runkeeper, and then I've created a challenge for myself. I've committed that I am going to try to burn 10,000 calories through exercise by Christmas. I then get to throw that challenge out to my friends and see if they want to support me in that, Or, knowing my friends, more likely, we give them the option to bet against me. So, they get to make a bet. If I succeed in my challenge, then their money will go to the cause that I currently support. By the way, we use Givi, the donation platform that we've created to do this. If I lose the challenge, then I will have to give the equal and opposite amount of money to each of the causes that all of my friends who are betting against me supporting on Givi. I'm hoping that this social pressure is going to be enough to get me up and out of the door and get me running and burning those calories. The reason we call it the burner, though, is because you're either going to burn those calories or it's going to burn a hole in your cash. But either way, we're trying to use social dynamics to make social good. I arrived in Chisinau on Friday at 1 a.m. I thought I was going to go to bed, but 10 minutes later, I found myself on the terrace with a drink in my hand in the midst of a birthday party. I had stumbled in on some speeches and toasts for the man whose birthday it was. His name is John. He worked in a local hospice here in Chisinau called Hospice Angelus. Some of you may know it. And I thought I was about to hear stories of people talking about drunken nights out and embarrassing moments. But what I heard next inspired and encouraged me. Everybody there, on his birthday, friends not from the hospice, the favorite thing they could think to talk about to celebrate this man's birthday was to talk about how he had managed to creatively engage them to connect with causes that he cared about and now they care about. They talked about football fundraisers and fancy dinners and galas. They talked about rally days. They talked about quiz nights. In fact, the quiz night was so successful that people who wanted to come and give to the hospice had to be turned away at the door. You see, I think he knows something about the fact that it's not what people give, but it's how you invite them to give that determines whether or not giving is good for them. He's tapped in to a different kind of social motivation. He has helped them to connect with causes in this interconnected world that matter to them. He's invited them to give a little bit of themselves, wrap their giving in a bit of their love. And he's invited them to do it in the most creative, enjoyable way possible. It is this kind of leadership that encourages me that we might be able to create a different kind of social giving norm. So the question is giving good for you? And I want to challenge you, off the back of his story with his friends, to go and find, or create, if you can't find one, a social giving experience of some kind, something that talks to your passions, your causes. Connect with a cause that matters. Invite people to give a little bit of themselves, wrap their giving in love, and then share that in the most fun, exciting possible way you can with as many of your buddies and have a great time. And then you can come back and tell me whether or not giving is good for you. Thank you for your time.